Welcome back to TaraChessAcademy. Today we're going to solve puzzles about pawn promotion ideas.
Hi everyone, for today we prepared interesting puzzles about power of passed pawns. So let's start with positions that you see on the chessboard. So this position is a nice example why knowing some typical endgames could be useful for you. Especially in this puzzle, we will discuss an idea of breakthrough. So you say that black has an extra pawn, but white has pawns that are not so far away from the last rank. So let's think maybe we can use these pawns. So Tara, what ideas do you have?
If we capture the pawn on b7, our pawn is one step away from promoting, but this is not a good idea because the king could go to c7
Yeah, of
or,
course.
yeah,
So first I think black can capture the queen, trade queens, and now it looks like black has a winning endgame. So black stops the pawn without any problems. So should be something else.
we know that if we push our pawns, the black queen will capture our queen, and then it will be black's turn.
Mm-hmm.
So if we played pawn captures b7, it didn't work because after black makes a queen trade, it's black's turn. It switches to black's turn, and then black has the winning advantage. So we should capture the queen first if we want the advantage.
So we start with queen's exchange, Of course, black has to capture. And should we take the pawn in this position, or it's still not a good plan?
It's still not a good plan because the king can come to c7 and stop our pawn.
Yeah, as in previous variation. So what should we do for white if we still want to win, of course?
There's a pawn on b5 that could try something. So let's try to move it to b6.
Nice idea. Yeah, so this is what we call breakthrough. Okay, so I don't think that black can just ignore this move. So what if black captures?
Then there's two ways to win, moving the pawn to a7 or actually only moving.
Yeah, so if we
Yeah.
capture, the king is in the square, so it stops the pawn. So if we want to win, we just should play pawn to a7. Okay, what happens if b7 takes a6?
Then I would capture the pawn on a7
Yeah, we
because
don't play b7, right?
yeah, I want to get further away from the black king.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well done. So you see, we start with queen's exchange, and then after b6, black doesn't have any chances. So this is how white wins, So keep in your mind breakthrough ideas. Okay, so probably we can go to the next position that we prepared. Oh yeah, this one is really nice. Nice idea of a nice example of candidate moves and also about intermediate moves. So as always, when you know that it's time for some tactics or combinations, or if you just feel that it's a critical position in the game, you should think about candidate moves with checks or with captures first, And of course, you can think about just attacking moves. So what good checks, Tara, do you see in this position? What could we start with?
I think there's no good checks for the queen because if it goes to d5 or f7 or h7, the queen can in all of these squares, the queen can be captured.
Yeah, of course. So probably we shouldn't start with a queen sacrifice immediately. Let's think what else we can do.
There's one check with the rook, and that is if the rook goes to f8.
Let's try. I don't think that black can, for instance, capture the pawn, because, okay, then we just get the rook. So probably, rook takes f8 in this position. Okay.
It's tempting to capture the rook because you think, I'll capture something and promote. But if you do that too quickly, the game might be a draw because it's queen versus pawns.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a
Yeah.
draw.
So, of course, probably even black has better chances, yeah, with an extra
Yeah.
pawn. But yeah, probably this position and this position, we should think about some intermediate moves, yeah? So taking the rook is the most obvious move, but let's think what else we can do.
What we want to do is we know that our king on g8, the black king on g8, it's stopping our pawn from promoting. So let's try to deflect the black king. And we can do that by capturing the pawn on h7.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I don't think that king f7 is a nice plan. So what happens after king f7?
Then you can capture the pawn.
The rook,
But
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Two queens.
And yeah, the difference is it's a double check, so the only thing, and if they move away, we capture their queen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
Uh,
probably black gonna capture the queen in this position.
now, now that you sacrificed your queen, you need to get your advantage. If you don't, black will have an easily winning position. So
Mm-hmm.
let's capture the rook, but we should be careful about which piece to get.
I know, I want to promote to a queen. Is it the best move?
The queen, it is the most powerful, but sometimes doing under promotion, promoting to a different piece might be better or faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what should I promote to?
Let's look at the second piece, and that is the knight.
Okay, yeah. Now it's a fork on the chessboard, yeah? So good for us. The king escapes.
And then the knight captures the queen.
Yeah, so of course this endgame is absolutely winning for white. White stops the pawn easily, yeah, and then can just promote. So yeah, it's a really nice puzzle. Let's go to the next one. Okay. Oh, this one is nice. So white has an extra pawn, yeah, but it looks like black can capture it easily. So let's think what white could do in this position.
Before we start the moves, let's look at what white's plan could be. Because the white king is so far away from the g6 pawn, it's going to take a long time for the white king to go all the way up the board and help the pawn on g6. And by that time, the black king will capture the pawn and their pawn might promote too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a good idea.
Absolutely.
And another problem is that the bishop on g7 is blocking the pawn, and the pawn on a4 is being blocked by your bishop. So now that we know the problems, let's try to fix both of those problems and see what is the best move for white.
Okay. So should we start with a sacrifice?
I think we should, because if we move the bishop to any square, like b6, then the king could capture the pawn, and the position is not winning.
Yeah, I think I would even play c4 first. Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe next move I can capture the pawn.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So probably it's not bishop b6.
Let's try bishop c3.
Nice. So you also want to decoy one of the black pieces and block c5 pawn. Yeah, it looks like interception a little. Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't think that king takes a4 would be good. Yeah, of course, this pawn promotes without any problems. So we can discuss what happens if the king captures the bishop or if the bishop captures. So what could we do after king takes c3?
If the king captures the bishop, then the pawn on a4 moves forward and will soon promote.
What if I try to stop it? What would you do?
Then you can continue by going to a6. Now you have to use a deflection idea. So you could either move the pawn to a7 or the pawn to g7.
Maybe a7, yeah. So just one bishop can't stop both of the pawns in this position, yeah? And of course, in this endgame, white still should play carefully, yeah? But of course, this endgame is winning for white, yeah? And also the white king is pretty close to help the queen to stop the pawn. Yeah, so let's also discuss what happens if bishop takes c3.
If the bishop captures our bishop, we can still move our pawn to a5.
Okay. So what if I capture?
Then I would move the pawn to g7, and the bishop can't stop.
Yeah, so this endgame is still winning for white. Okay, so very nice, well done. Yeah, bishop c3 is a nice move. So let's go to the next puzzle. Yeah, this one is also nice, so probably we can think about interception idea. So white has to win. Yeah, right now we don't see any white pawns that are close to the last rank, but I think we can change this. So yeah, and as always, think about candidate moves with checks or with captures first. So let's think what we can do in this position. What should we start with?
First, let's look at the checks. If the rook goes to a8 or the bishop goes to d5, both of these checks don't help us. It doesn't help
Probably, yeah.
us to get closer.
Oh, I know. Maybe we can start with b5 takes c6. Yeah, so my plan is if black captures, yeah, I can get the pawn. But in this position, I think black has an intermediate move, so knight takes first and then, yeah, black captures the pawn. I don't think that this position looks winning for white. So that's why b5 takes c6 doesn't work in this position. So let's think what else we can do.
There's another way to capture the pawn, and you could do that with the bishop.
Okay. So I don't think that black can ignore this, so probably pawn takes. And now again, yeah, of course we can capture the pawn. So how could black stop it? Rook c3. And I don't see what white can do in this position. So if you try to protect the pawn, black still has an extra knight. And yeah, in this endgame, I don't think that white wins. So any other ideas except taking the pawn on c6?
I would move the pawn to b6.
Yeah, but it looks like black can do the same, so just rook b3. Any difference between this position and previous?
The difference is that when the pawn is on the b file and the other pawn is on the a file, both of the pawns can be protected. But if the pawn on b6 is on a different file, like it's on the c file, the pawns would be separated, so it would be easy for black to target them.
Okay. So what should white do? How should white play in this position?
White has an interesting idea to block the rook. If they move the rook to b5,
Rook sacrifice. Okay, I would be happy to capture with a pawn.
here white has to be really careful because if they move the pawn to b7, the black pawn would capture the white pawn, and the rook would stop the white pawn.
I agree. So what should white do first before moving the pawn to b7?
The white pawn has two options, to go to a5 or to capture the pawn. If it captures the pawn, the rook would capture and stop white's plan.
Yeah, so should be something else.
So the better move is to move the pawn to a5.
I think black should try to get to the last rank with the rook. Yeah. Okay, so I play rook d3. What would you do?
Then I would move my pawn to b7.
Okay, I do this.
I can't move my pawn to b8 because of the rook, so I would move my other pawn to a6.
Okay. Does it help if I move the knight closer?
I would move the pawn to a7.
So, yeah, now just don't promote. Yeah, like this, don't move your pawn to a8. Yeah, but moving it to b8 would be enough for you to win the game. Yeah, and next move you capture the knight. So yeah, still a very nice puzzle. And let's go to the last one for today. Yeah, probably this puzzle is a little bit different. So this puzzle is an example when moves with checks or captures. Yeah, actually, I don't see any checks in this position, but I probably talk about these captures. Yeah, these captures don't work, so maybe we can think about some attacking moves, and maybe even it's not like just an attacking move immediately. Yeah, it has a hidden idea. So yeah, white has a passed pawn on f7. And let's think if it's possible to help it, yeah? Of course, we don't start with rook 8 in this position just because then rook takes f7, right? So
Yeah.
let's think what else we can do.
Let's try doing something with the bishop.
Okay, why not? Usually it's a good idea to use new pieces in your attack. So please, what should we do?
Instead of just going to random square, I would move the bishop to f4 because then I get on the same diagonal as the black rook and the black king.
So yeah, now probably we have this plan with rook e8 because c7 rook would be pinned. Okay, but what if I just capture the pawn? So what happens?
Then I can move my rook to e7, a discovered check, and I win the black rook.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't want to capture the pawn anymore. But I think I would like to change position for the king, so probably I play king b7. So what should we do in this position?
Now black got out of the pin by moving the king, so let's move the rook. I think we should do something with the rook. So let's try to capture the pawn on f5.
Yeah, so in this position, we still can use the rule about candidate moves. Yeah, so let's think about sacrifices. I mean, like about captures first. Okay, so what is the plan? Probably we don't want black pawn to stay on g6, and we would like to get two passed pawns, and they're gonna support each other. Okay, so we also attack this rook. Yeah, so for instance, if rook goes to f8, yeah, I think this endgame is absolutely winning for white. Yeah. So probably the main variations that we should discuss is g6 takes f5. Okay, now should I move my pawn immediately or I should do something else first?
You shouldn't move your pawn to g6 right away because if you do that, then black has time to save the rook on c7 and
Yeah,
stop the pawns.
it looks like two rooks can stop the pawns easily. Yeah. Okay, so that's why. Let's capture first. Yeah, of course, you see that the rook can't capture because then the pawn promotes immediately. So the black king gonna take. What happens now?
I can't promote because of the rook, so I would move the pawn to g6.
Okay, still try to move my king closer.
And now g7.
Okay.
Here there's two options, f8 or g8. I would move the pawn to g8.
Yeah, of course. And you see that this position is absolutely winning for white. Yeah, so the first move, bishop f4, is nice.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video to others. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!
Bye!